Been driving trucks across this country for close to 20 years, and I've seen some things that would make a normal person lose sleep for weeks. But this one night still haunts me, and I've never told anyone about it. I don't drive that route anymore, and if I can help it, I never will. It started as a typical haul, a late-night run across Route 93, deep in Nevada. If you've never driven through the Nevada desert at night, count yourself lucky. It's empty, desolate, and lonely as hell. The long, straight stretches of road make you feel like you're driving through some endless void. Just you, the truck, and the darkness. No radio signals, no signs of life, nothing but the whine of the engine and the occasional flash of headlights from another poor soul making the same journey. That night, I was hauling a load of scrap metal from a yard in Reno. Headed to Phoenix. The sky was clear, stars speckled across it like pinholes in black velvet, and the moon hung low, casting everything in an eerie silver glow. It was around 2 a.m., and I hadn't seen another vehicle for a good hour, just open road and silence. As I approached a particularly isolated stretch of road, the CB radio crackled to life. Normally I'd leave it on just to listen to the chatter, but there'd been nothing all night. Suddenly, I heard a voice, distant and muffled, like it was coming through a tunnel. "Breaker, breaker, you out there, trucker?" I hesitated, then grabbed the mic. "Yeah, I'm here." "Who's this?" No answer. Just static. Weird. But I've had worse connections out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't think much of it and kept driving. 5 minutes later, the voice came again, clearer this time, "Pull over, driver." Now I've learned to trust my instincts in this line of work, and every fiber of my being screamed at me to ignore it. But something, call it curiosity, call it stupidity, made me respond. "Who's asking?" For a few moments, there was nothing but static, and then as clear as day, I heard, "It's too late. You're already on the road." My heart skipped a beat. That phrase didn't make sense. I was already on the road. What the hell was that supposed to mean? I didn't reply this time. Just kept driving. But my eyes were darting between the mirrors, expecting to see headlights or some sign of another trucker. Nothing. Then, about a mile up, I saw something in the distance, a set of taillights, dim and flickering, barely visible. I squinted, trying to make out what I was seeing. As I got closer, I realized it was an old rig, one of those older Peterbilts, beat up and rusted. The trailer was swaying slightly, like it was struggling to keep up with the cab. "Breaker, breaker, you got eyes on me?" The voice on the radio again. This time it sent chills down my spine. It sounded too close, like whoever it was in the cab with me. I glanced at the radio, my hands gripping the wheel a little tighter. "Who is this?" "Pull over, driver." "It's too late now." I didn't respond. The rig ahead was slowing down, the taillights growing brighter. I was catching up. For some reason, I felt compelled to keep going. To pass it, to get away from it. As I pulled into the left lane and came alongside the truck, I glanced over at the cab. That's when I saw it, or more accurately, didn't see it. The driver's seat was empty. No one was in the truck. I blinked, thinking I must have been tired, hallucinating maybe. But no, it was real. The rig was moving, its wheels turning, the trailer swaying, but there was no driver. The CB crackled again. "Pull over, driver. You're not alone out here." I slammed the mic down and floored it. My rig roared as I sped past the driverless truck, my heart pounding in my chest. I kept checking the mirrors, but the old Peterbilt didn't fall behind. It was keeping pace with me, its tail lights flickering like a ghost haunting the highway. Suddenly, the lights ahead of me went out. The truck was gone. No tail lights, no shadow, nothing but the dark road stretching out into the distance. My hands were shaking. I'd never been one to believe in ghosts or any of that supernatural crap. But this felt real. I fumbled for my phone, ready to call dispatch or anyone who could help, but I had no signal. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, I was completely alone. Or so I thought. That's when I saw it. In the distance, about 100 yards ahead, the Peterbilt was back. Its tail lights flickered on again, as if it had materialized out of thin air. It was parked now, right in the middle of the road, blocking both lanes. I had no choice but to slow down. I couldn't stop completely. If I did, I knew something bad would happen. My instincts were screaming at me, but I couldn't turn around. Couldn't take a detour. There was nowhere else to go. As I got closer, I noticed something even more disturbing. The truck wasn't just parked. It was idling. The engine was on, and yet the cab was still empty. I rolled to a near stop, my headlights illuminating the back of the trailer. The door was slightly ajar, swinging gently in the desert breeze. A low creak echoed through the night. Then I saw movement. Something. Someone was climbing out of the trailer. My stomach dropped as a figure emerged, tall, thin, its face obscured by shadows. It didn't look right. Its limbs were too long, its movements too jerky, like a marionette controlled by invisible strings. It stepped onto the asphalt, turning toward me. My headlights caught its face. It was hollow, black pits where eyes should have been, its mouth hanging open in a silent scream. Skin stretched too tight over bones, as if it had been drained of life, left to rot in the desert sun. And yet, it moved toward me. I panicked, slammed the truck into reverse and floored it, tires screeching as I backed up. The thing kept coming, faster now, its arms outstretched, fingers clawing at the air like it was trying to reach me. I yanked the wheel, turning the rig around, praying the thing wouldn't catch up. As I sped away, I glanced in the mirror one last time. The road was empty again. No truck, no figure, just the open desert and the dark sky. I didn't stop driving until I hit the next town, and even then, I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see that rig behind me again. I've driven a lot of roads in my life, but I'll never forget that night on Route 93. To this day, I don't know what I saw, but I don't drive that way anymore. And I never, ever leave my CB radio on at night. Some roads are better left unexplored. Been driving trucks long enough to know that some stretches of highway are best avoided after dark. You can laugh at that if you want. But I'm telling you, there are places out there that don't feel right. Not just dangerous in the normal way, like bad weather or wild animals, but something deeper, something that feels wrong. Dead Man's Pass up in Oregon is one of those places. I had a midnight haul from Seattle to Boise, a long but manageable route I'd done a dozen times before. My company had me running a rush job, so I didn't have time to stop for the night. It was already late, around 11 p.m., when I reached the base of the mountain. The pass was notorious among truckers for its steep inclines, sharp curves, and sudden weather changes. But tonight it was dead calm. The full moon lit up the road, and I was grateful for that, at least. Still, something about that stretch of road always made me uneasy. Maybe it was the sheer drop-offs to one side, the jagged cliffs to the other, or the way the road seemed to disappear into the trees. Or maybe it was the stories. Every trucker's heard them, tales of rigs that vanished, of drivers who went missing, never to be seen again. Some said it was the terrain. Some said it was something else. I never bought into that stuff, but as I climbed higher, I started to feel that creeping sense of dread in my chest. The higher I went, the more I noticed how still the world around me was. No wind, no animals, just the low hum of my engine and the whine of the tires on the asphalt. It was like I was driving through a frozen snapshot of the world and everything was watching. I was about halfway through the pass when I saw him. At first, I thought it was a deer or maybe a fallen tree up ahead. But as I got closer, I realized it was a man standing at the side of the road, his arm raised like he was trying to hitch a ride. He was wearing an old flannel jacket, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. His face was shadowed in the dim light. but I could see enough to know something was off. He wasn't moving, not a bit. He didn't even turn his head as my headlights swept over him. I don't pick up hitchhikers. It's just not something I do, especially not on a road like that in the dead of night. So I kept going. But as I passed him, I felt a cold, unnatural shiver run down my spine. Like someone had just walked over my grave. I glanced in the mirror, and that's when things got weird. The guy was gone. I'm talking vanished, like he hadn't even been there. No sign of him, not even a shadow on the asphalt. My foot hit the brake hard, almost instinctively. The truck slowed, but the thought of stopping out here, in this place, sent my heart racing. I flicked my lights around, scanning the area. Nothing. No sign of him. Not on the road. Not in the trees. It was like the guy had been swallowed up by the darkness. I'm not one to let nerves get the better of me. So I muttered something about it just being my tired mind, playing tricks, and got the truck moving again. But as soon as I rounded the next bend, there he was. Same guy, same spot. Standing at the side of the road, thumb out like he hadn't just disappeared into thin air. Only this time, he was a little closer to the middle of the road, like he was daring me to stop. I slammed my foot on the gas and sped past him, heart pounding now. I didn't care where he came from or how he got there. I wasn't stopping. I checked the mirror again. Nothing. The road behind me was empty. That's when the radio came alive. The CB crackled and hissed before a voice came through, faint at first, but growing louder. "Driver, pull over." It wasn't the voice of dispatch. Hell, it didn't even sound like any trucker I'd ever heard. It was deep, gravelly, like someone speaking through a mouthful of gravel and ice. I grabbed the mic, ready to respond. But before I could, the voice came again, more insistent this time. "Pull over. You don't belong here." I dropped the mic. I'd had my share of weird conversations on the CB, but this wasn't normal. I told myself it was just some joker messing with me. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. As I pushed on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My skin crawled, and the air in the cab felt thick, suffocating. I checked the mirrors again. Still no sign of the hitchhiker. The next few miles were a blur of winding roads and adrenaline. I wanted off that mountain, and I wanted off fast, but just as I thought I was in the clear, just as I started to relax, there he was again. This time, he was standing in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching as the truck skidded to a stop. The hitchhiker didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me. And that's when I saw his face for the first time. His eyes were completely black, like two endless pits of darkness. His skin was pale, too pale, like it hadn't seen the sun in years. And his mouth, God, his mouth, was twisted into a grin, wide and unnatural, stretching too far across his face. He didn't look human. He stepped toward the truck. I threw the rig into reverse, my hands shaking as I tried to keep control. The truck roared back, and I swerved to avoid him. But as I did, something slammed into the side of the cab. The whole rig shook, and I heard a sound like nails scraping down the metal. I glanced out the window. The hitchhiker was gone, but his handprints were smeared across the glass. Dark. Oily streaks that dripped like tar. I didn't stop again until I hit the first truck stop at the base of the mountain. My hands were still trembling as I climbed out of the cab, heart pounding in my chest. I checked the side of the truck, half expecting to see some kind of damage, but there was nothing. No dents, no scratches. Just those handprints smeared across the window like a warning. I went inside, ordered a coffee, and tried to shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. There were a couple of other truckers sitting at the counter, so I asked them if they'd ever seen anything strange up on Dead Man's Pass. One of the older guys, a grizzled veteran with a beard like Santa Claus, looked up from his cup and met my eyes. "You saw the hitchhiker, didn't you?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Who is he?" The old man sighed, shaking his head. They say he was a trucker, long time ago. Broke down on the pass in the middle of winter. No one came to help him. Froze to death out there. Now he's stuck, hitchhiking forever, trying to get a ride that'll never come. I sat there in stunned silence, the coffee growing cold in my hands. You did good by not picking him up, the old man added. Folks who do, they don't come back. I left that truck stop without another word and never drove Dead Man's Pass again. To this day, I'll take the long way around if I have to. And every time I pass another hitchhiker, I keep my eyes straight ahead. Something inside me told me to leave, to get in my truck and drive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just nerves from being out here alone. I topped off my tank, got in my truck, and pulled back onto the highway. That's when the CB radio crackled to life. Breaker, breaker, you out there? The voice was low, almost a whisper, and I could barely make out the words through the static. I glanced at the radio. It had been silent all night. Usually I hear chatter from other drivers on a run like this, but it had been dead air since I hit the highway. Who's this? I asked, gripping the mic tighter than I intended. For a long moment, there was no response. Just the faint hum of the road beneath my tires and the rhythmic thumping of my engine. Then the voice came again, clearer this time. Where you headed, driver? Something about the tone made my skin crawl. I didn't answer, just stared at the radio, heart thudding in my chest. I kept driving, eyes fixed on the dark stretch of highway ahead. But the voice came back, more insistent now. Don't you know you're not alone out here? I slammed the mic down and turned the radio off. I wasn't in the mood for jokes. The road ahead was long and straight, and the sooner I got through this, the better. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just some idiot playing around. But the road was completely empty. No one had passed me in hours, so who the hell was out there? About 15 minutes later, my headlights caught something in the distance. A pair of taillights. Another truck, far ahead, moving slowly. At first, I thought it was just another rig. But as I got closer, I realized it looked all too familiar. It was the same rig from the gas station. The rusted trailer, the filthy windows, the same beat-up cab. I slammed on the brakes, my truck lurching as I slowed down. How the hell had it gotten ahead of me? There was no way it could have passed me without me noticing. I pulled into the left lane to pass it, my heart hammering in my chest. As I came up alongside the cab, I glanced over and immediately wished I hadn't. The driver's seat was empty. There was no one behind the wheel. The truck was moving, but there was no driver. I could see the cab clearly, illuminated by my headlights, and it was completely empty. My blood ran cold. I floored the gas, trying to put distance between me and that rig. But as I passed it, something caught my eye. Movement in the passenger seat. I looked over just in time to see a figure sitting there. Dark, shadowy, its face hidden in the darkness of the cab. It turned its head toward me, and though I couldn't make out its features, I knew it was staring right at me. My hands went clammy on the wheel, and I swerved back into my lane. My heart racing. The rig faded into the distance behind me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still there, watching me, following me. A few miles down the road, the CB crackled again. This time, I didn't touch it. I didn't want to hear that voice, but it came through clear as day. You can't outrun me, driver. Not on this road. I pressed my foot harder on the gas. The engine roaring as I pushed my rig faster than I'd ever driven it before. The road was empty, but I could still feel that other truck behind me, like a shadow stalking me through the night. My palms were slick with sweat, my heart pounding in my ears. Then, without warning, my headlights flickered. The dashboard lights dimmed, and the engine sputtered, as if the truck was losing power. I swore under my breath, trying to keep control as the rig slowed down, grinding to a halt on the side of the road. The engine died completely, leaving me in total darkness. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, breathing hard. The only sound was the ticking of the cooling engine and the wind rustling through the dry grass. I fumbled for the key, trying to restart the truck, but the engine wouldn't turn over. Then I saw them. In the rearview mirror, just barely visible in the dim moonlight, were those same taillights. The rig was parked about 50 yards behind me, just sitting there, its headlights off. I couldn't see the cab, couldn't see if anyone was inside, but I knew it was there, watching me. I scrambled for my phone, but there was no signal, no way to call for help. I was alone, stranded on the highway with whatever that thing was. The CB crackled one last time. "You're mine now, driver. This road doesn't end for you." I didn't wait to hear more. I grabbed my flashlight, threw open the door, and bolted from the cab, running down the highway. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. I ran until I saw the faint glow of lights in the distance, a small diner at the edge of the road. When I stumbled inside, panting and drenched in sweat, the waitress looked up at me, eyes wide with surprise. "You okay, hun?" she asked. I didn't answer, just collapsed into a booth, shaking. I spent the rest of the night there, too terrified to go back to my truck. When the sun finally rose, I got a tow and had the truck checked out. They couldn't find anything wrong with it. I never saw that rig again, but I've avoided Route 281 ever since. There's something out there on that highway, something that shouldn't be, something that's still waiting for me, somewhere in the dark. And every now and then, when I'm driving alone at night, I swear I can hear it. The voice on the CB calling my name. Been a long-haul trucker for nearly 30 years, and if there's one thing I've learned in all that time, it's that the road has its own rules. I've driven through every kind of weather, crossed state lines in the dead of night, and seen things that most people wouldn't believe. But there's one story I don't tell often. It's the kind of thing that gets under your skin, the kind of thing that makes you doubt what's real. But I swear, every word is true. It happened about 10 years ago on a haul from Denver to St. Louis. The load was a simple one, just pallets of canned goods. And I'd done this route countless times before. But something was different about this trip from the start. The dispatcher had been jittery when he gave me the job, like he knew something he wasn't telling me. I tried to shrug it off. Trucking's a tough business, and people get jumpy when they've got deadlines to meet. The first few hours of the drive were uneventful. The sun set behind me as I cruised through the rolling hills of eastern Colorado. And by the time I hit Kansas, the night had fully set in. The interstate stretched out before me like an endless ribbon, my headlights cutting through the thick darkness. No other cars were on the road, and I was miles away from the nearest truck stop. It was just me and the long, empty highway. That's when I saw the first sign of trouble. Up ahead, maybe a quarter-mile down the road, was a truck, a big rig like mine, but it wasn't moving. It was just sitting there on the shoulder, lights off, cab dark. That wasn't unusual in itself. I've seen plenty of drivers pull over for a quick rest. What was odd though was the feeling I got as I approached it. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was like the truck was watching me. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the only way to describe it. There was this pressure in the air, this tension that made my skin crawl. I slowed down as I passed, trying to get a look at the cab. Maybe the driver needed help, but the windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. I debated pulling over to check on the guy. But something told me to keep going. A deep gnawing instinct in my gut warned me against stopping. So I pressed on, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror as the rig disappeared into the night behind me. A few miles down the road, the CB radio crackled to life. Now, if you're not a trucker, you might not know this, but late-night chatter on the CB is pretty common. Drivers share road conditions, give warnings about speed traps, or just shoot the breeze to keep each other awake. But this was different. The voice on the other end was distorted, low, and garbled, like someone was speaking through a bad connection. "Breaker, Breaker, you there, driver?" I grabbed the mic, hesitating for a second before responding. "Yeah, I'm here." "What's up?" The voice came back, clearer this time, but still with that odd staticky undertone. "Where you headed, friend?" "St. Louis," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You all right? Sound like you're having radio trouble." There was a pause. Then the voice returned, lower, almost like a whisper. "You should turn around. This road, it's not safe tonight." I glanced at the radio. My pulse quickening. "What are you talking about?" No answer. I tried calling back, but the CB was dead, just static. I was alone again, the road stretching endlessly before me. That's when the fog rolled in. It came out of nowhere. 1 minute the road was clear, and the next, I could barely see 5 feet in front of me. It was thick, swirling in the beams of my headlights like something alive. I slowed down, my knuckles white on the wheel. The fog was dense, almost suffocating, and it felt wrong, like it didn't belong there. Then I saw it again. The truck. The same one from earlier, sitting on the side of the road, its dark shape barely visible through the fog. It was closer this time, maybe 50 yards ahead, just sitting there, motionless. But this time, knew something was wrong. It couldn't have gotten ahead of me. I hadn't passed any exits, and there were no other roads nearby. A cold chill ran down my spine as I drove past, and for the first time in years, I felt genuine fear on the road. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look into the cab. I didn't want to see who, or what, was inside. The fog only got worse. It clung to the truck. Thick and unnatural, swirling in ways that didn't make sense. And the silence, God, the silence, was oppressive. The only sound was the hum of my engine and the tires on the pavement. It was like the world had been muted, like I was the only person left alive on this stretch of highway. Another 10 minutes passed, and then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the fog cleared. I exhaled. My muscles slowly relaxing as I pushed on. But the feeling of unease didn't leave. I couldn't shake the thought of that truck. How had it gotten ahead of me? Why hadn't I seen it pass? The CB crackled again. This time the voice was clearer and it chilled me to the bone. "Don't look back." My heart slammed against my ribs. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Something told me to listen. Something told me that if I looked in the rearview mirror, I'd see something I didn't want to. I fought the urge. Every instinct was screaming at me to look, to see if that truck was following me. But I didn't. Instead, I pushed the pedal to the floor, the engine roaring as I sped down the highway. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The road was completely empty, and the moon had disappeared behind thick clouds, leaving the highway bathed in a dim, eerie light. Then, out of nowhere, my headlights flickered. Just for a second, they blinked off, plunging me into complete darkness. When they came back on, my heart nearly stopped. The truck was in front of me. It was sitting in the middle of the road, blocking both lanes, its back end facing me. I hit the brakes. The tires screeching as my rig skidded to a stop just inches from the trailer. My heart was racing, my mind scrambling to make sense of what was happening. That's when I heard the knocking. A slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap on the window of my cab. I froze. The sound was faint, like someone was tapping their fingernails against the glass, waiting for me to turn and look. But I didn't. I couldn't. Every fiber of my being screamed not to turn around. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. Tap. It was coming from the driver's side, just inches away from my head. I clenched my eyes shut, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I'd heard stories about things on the road, about things that weren't human, but I'd never believed them. Not until now. The knocking stopped. For a long, terrifying moment, there was only silence. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare breathe. And then, just as suddenly as it had stopped, the knocking started again, this time from the passenger side window. My blood turned to ice. The thing, whatever it was circling my truck, tapping on the windows, waiting for me to acknowledge it. But I didn't. I couldn't. I kept my eyes forward, my hands locked on the wheel. Then, the radio crackled to life one last time. "You're almost there, driver. Just a little further. Don't stop." I swallowed hard, every instinct telling me to get the hell out of there. The truck in front of me was still blocking the road, but there was just enough room to maneuver around it. Slowly, I eased off the brake and guided my rig around the back of the trailer, my hands trembling as I forced myself not to look at the windows. As soon as I cleared the truck, I floored it. The engine roared to life, and I shot down the highway, leaving the cursed rig behind. For the next hour, I didn't stop, didn't look back. The road was eerily quiet, the fog long gone, but the fear stayed with me, clawing at the edges of my mind. When I finally pulled into a truck stop on the outskirts of St. Louis, I parked my rig and collapsed into the driver's seat, my body shaking from the adrenaline. I didn't sleep that night. Hell, I didn't sleep for days after. I never told anyone about what happened, not the dispatcher, not the other truckers at the stop. They wouldn't believe me if I tried. But I know what I saw. I know what followed me that night. And sometimes, when I'm driving late at night on a long stretch of empty road, I hear it again. The knocking. Tap, tap, tap. And I know deep down that it's still out there waiting. I've been a trucker for over 20 years, and I've always prided myself on handling the long, lonely stretches of highway. The isolation doesn't get to me like it does to some. I'm good at tuning out the silence, keeping my mind on the road and my rig steady. But there's one stretch of road I won't drive anymore, one that I steer clear of if I can. It's just a two-lane strip in the middle of nowhere, Highway 62. The night I'm about to tell you about is the reason why. I'll never forget it. It was late October, just after midnight, and I was hauling a load of frozen goods from Tulsa down to Austin. My usual route had been closed for construction, so I took a detour. Highway 62. It cut through the backwoods of Oklahoma and Texas, miles of nothing but dense trees and the occasional rundown gas station. No big deal. I'd driven roads like this plenty of times. But from the moment I turned onto 62, something felt off. The road was too quiet, even for a back road. Normally you'd pass the odd car or see the lights of a farmhouse in the distance, but there was nothing. Just a black ribbon of asphalt stretching out in front of me, swallowed by the darkness beyond my headlights. After about an hour on 62, I noticed something strange. A set of headlights in my rearview mirror. They weren't there before. And they were coming up fast. The trucker in me figured it was just another driver trying to pass, so I kept an eye on them, expecting the car to overtake me at any moment. But they didn't. The headlights stayed right behind me, matching my speed. They weren't too close, but not far enough to give me comfort either. I tried to wave them on, tapping the brakes lightly to signal they could pass, but the lights stayed where they were. A chill crept up my spine, and I felt my stomach tighten. I've had tailgaters before, but something about this didn't feel right. I couldn't shake the sense that whoever or whatever was behind me wasn't just another late-night driver. I reached for the CB radio, thinking maybe another trucker was nearby, someone I could talk to. But all I got was static. I flipped through the channels, more static. It didn't make any sense. The CB had worked fine all night, and I wasn't in the middle of nowhere, just the edge of it. After a few minutes, the headlights behind me blinked off. I glanced back, thinking maybe the car had turned off or slowed down, but there was nothing. No car, no lights, just empty highway stretching into the darkness. A sense of relief washed over me, but it didn't last long. Then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of an engine rumbling behind me. It was low at first, like a distant thunderstorm, but it grew louder, closer. I checked my mirrors again, but still, there was nothing there. No lights, no sign of any vehicle, just the sound. The engine roared as if it was right on top of me, but I couldn't see a damn thing. I pushed the pedal down a little harder, speeding up, but the sound followed, growing louder, more aggressive. Felt the rig shudder slightly, like something had nudged it. But when I looked, there was nothing. My heart was racing, hands slick on the wheel. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, just the isolation getting to me. But that didn't explain the noise, didn't explain the way my rig felt like it was being followed. I kept driving, heart pounding in my chest. And just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the engine noise stopped. Silence fell over the cab again, thick and heavy. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves, telling myself it was just one of those things, a trick of the wind or the sound bouncing off the trees. But then I saw it. Up ahead, in the middle of the road, was a truck, a big rig just like mine, parked across both lanes. Its headlights were off, its cab sitting in shadow. There was no warning, no sign of it as I'd approached. It was just there. I slammed on the brakes, my rig groaning as it slowed. I stopped just short of the truck, my headlights barely illuminating the side of its trailer. There were no markings, no logos, no identifying signs. Just a long white trailer that looked worn and old, too old to be on the road. I hit the horn long and loud, expecting someone to come out, a driver to appear. Nothing. The cab was dark. The truck as still as a tomb. My heart pounded in my chest, and every instinct told me to back up, turn around, and get the hell out of there. But I couldn't take my eyes off that truck. Something about it felt wrong, unnatural. It was like it didn't belong, like it had materialized out of thin air. After what felt like an eternity, I decided to get out and take a look. I grabbed my flashlight, my hand trembling as I opened the door and climbed down from the cab. The air was cold. Colder than it should have been for October in Oklahoma. My breath fogged in front of me as I approached the other truck, my boots crunching on the gravel at the edge of the road. I walked up to the cab, shining my flashlight on the door. It was closed, the windows too dirty to see inside. I knocked, the sound echoing into the night. No response. I knocked again, harder this time, but still nothing. That's when I heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible tapping, coming from inside the trailer. I froze, listening. Tap, tap, tap. It was faint, but steady. Like something or someone was inside, trying to get out. I swallowed hard, stepping back. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. The tapping grew louder, more urgent. Tap, tap, tap. Then, without warning, the back doors of the trailer creaked open. I stumbled backward, my flashlight flickering as the doors swung wide. Inside was nothing but darkness, thick, impenetrable darkness that swallowed the beam of my light. My heart hammered in my chest, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement, something shifting in the shadows, but I couldn't be sure. Then the doors slammed shut with a deafening bang. That was enough for me. I turned and bolted back to my truck, my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't look back, didn't care what was in that trailer or who had opened those doors. I just knew I had to get out of there. I jumped into the cab, slammed the door, and gunned the engine. My rig roared to life, and I backed up as fast as I could, tires screeching on the asphalt. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The truck was gone. Not just moved. Gone. The road was empty, the night swallowing everything behind me. There was no sign of the rig, no tire marks, nothing. Just the open highway stretching into the darkness. I drove for hours, my hands gripping the wheels so tight my knuckles were white. I didn't stop, didn't even glance at the CB. When I finally reached a truck stop just outside of Dallas, I pulled in, parked, and sat there for a long time, staring at the empty road ahead. I couldn't explain what had happened, and to be honest, I didn't want to. The next day, I asked around, talked to a few other truckers who knew the area. Most of them just shrugged it off. Said Highway 62 had always been a little strange, but one old-timer, a guy with more years behind the wheel than me, leaned in close when I mentioned the truck. "Don't drive that road at night," he said, his voice low and serious. "There's things out there, things that aren't from here. You see a truck on 62, you keep driving. Don't stop, don't look. And whatever you do, don't follow it." I've avoided Highway 62 ever since. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm driving through the back roads of some lonely stretch of highway, I think about that truck. And I wonder if it's still out there waiting. I don't plan on finding out. Been driving rigs for nearly 30 years now. And in all that time, there's one story I never tell. It's the kind of thing that, even if you believe me and I don't expect you to, you'd wish you didn't hear. But I'll say this. There are places out there on the road that you should avoid, no matter how tough or experienced you are. Places where things happen that have no explanation. Where truckers like me just vanish, leaving nothing behind but a cold, empty rig. This happened about 7 years ago, on a haul from Salt Lake City down to Phoenix. It was a straightforward route. I'd done it 100 times before, but this time there was a detour. Route 13, just hearing the name, still makes my blood run cold. I had to take it because of a bad wreck on the interstate ahead. A semi flipped over. And the radio was saying it would be hours before they cleared the scene. My dispatcher said Route 13 was the quickest way to get around it. Now, I'd heard stories about Route 13, old trucker tales. Everyone had, but no one I knew had actually driven it. They said it was a cursed road. The trucks that took that route sometimes didn't make it to the other end, but I figured it was all just nonsense. Truckers tell tall tales all the time to pass the hours. I didn't think much of it as I turned off the highway and onto the narrow, cracked asphalt of Route 13. At first, everything seemed fine. The road was empty, not a soul in sight, which wasn't surprising given the late hour and the fact that this wasn't a major route. But as I drove deeper into the desert, something started to feel wrong. It wasn't anything I could put my finger on at first, just a feeling. Like the air was heavier, thicker. My headlights seemed weaker, barely cutting through the darkness ahead of me. And the road, well, it seemed to stretch on forever. After about an hour, I started seeing the fog. It came in slowly. At first, just patches of mist curling up from the ground. But then it thickened, swallowing the road ahead until I could barely see 10 feet in front of me. I slowed down, my hands gripping the wheel tighter. I've driven through bad fog before, but this was different. It was like the fog was alive, creeping toward me, wrapping around the truck like a shroud. The CB crackled to life suddenly, startling me. "Breaker, breaker. Anyone out there?" The voice was distorted, low, like someone was talking through a mouthful of gravel. I hadn't touched the radio in hours. I hesitated, then grabbed the mic. "Yeah, I'm here." "Who's this?" There was a long pause. Static filled the air, hissing like a snake in the dark. Then the voice came again, clearer this time, but colder. Like a gust of wind from a frozen grave. "Get off the road, driver. Get off before it's too late." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "What are you talking about? Who is this?" The radio went dead, just static, no response. I shook my head, telling myself it was some trucker trying to mess with me. Guys do that out here sometimes, especially on long, lonely stretches of road. But the fog was getting worse. I couldn't see a damn thing, and my GPS had stopped working. The little screen showed nothing but a gray blob, and the road markers had disappeared miles ago. Still, I kept driving. What else could I do? Then I saw the first sign of trouble. There, on the side of the road, barely visible through the fog, was a wrecked semi. Its trailer was jackknifed across the shoulder. The front cab crumpled like a tin can. I slowed down, craning my neck to get a better look, but something about it made my stomach churn. The truck looked old, really old, like it had been there for years. Rust covered the metal, and the tires were deflated, half sunk into the cracked asphalt. But that wasn't what made my skin crawl. There was someone standing next to the wreck, a man. Tall and thin, dressed in a faded trucker's jacket, his face obscured by the fog. He was just standing there, staring at me as I passed, not moving, not waving for help, just watching. I sped up, heart pounding in my chest. Something was wrong. I've seen wrecks before, and the first thing any driver does is try to signal for help. But this guy didn't move an inch. He just stood there, his eyes locked on my truck as I drove by. The fog swallowed him up and I was alone again. I kept going, but now my nerves were on edge. Every shadow, every swirl of mist made me jump. The fog was thickening and I was starting to think I should have listened to that voice on the radio. Maybe I should have turned around, but it was too late now. I was in the thick of it and there was no way to go but forward. Then, about 20 minutes later, I saw another truck. This one was coming toward me, headlights dim and flickering. I breathed a sigh of relief. Another trucker. Maybe I could flag him down, ask if he knew where the hell I was. But as the truck got closer, I felt that same cold dread settle over me. There was something wrong with it. The cab was dark, no lights inside. Trailer was dented, covered in mud and grime like it hadn't seen the light of day in years. As it passed by, I caught a glimpse of the driver. He was slumped over the wheel, face pale, eyes wide open. But he wasn't looking at the road. He was looking right at me. For a split second, our eyes locked, and I swear to God, I saw death in those eyes, not fear. Not panic, just death, cold and empty, staring back at me from the other side of that fogged-up windshield. I hit the gas, heart racing, and sped down the road, my hands shaking on the wheel. What the hell was going on? I had to be losing it. That's what I told myself. Fatigue, the isolation, maybe even a trick of the fog, but the road kept going on and on with no end in sight. No signs, no exits, no landmarks. Just that narrow strip of asphalt disappearing into the mist. Then the radio crackled again. This time, the voice was different. Softer, female. But it sent the same chill down my spine. You're not going to make it, driver. No one makes it out of here. I slammed my fist on the dashboard. Who the hell are you? Silence. I gritted my teeth, trying to hold it together, but the panic was setting in now. I checked the time. It was nearly 4 a.m., but it felt like I'd been driving for days. The road wasn't making sense anymore. It was like I was stuck in some kind of loop, passing the same twisted bare trees, the same empty stretches of desert, and the fog. It was so thick now, I couldn't see the edges of the road. Then up ahead I saw lights, not headlights. These were different, faint yellowish glowing from the side of the road. I slowed down as I got closer, squinting through the fog. It was a diner, one of those old 24-hour greasy spoons you see in the middle of nowhere, with a flickering neon sign that barely worked. The parking lot was empty, but the lights inside were on. I pulled over, my hands trembling as I killed the engine. I didn't want to get out, but something told me I had no choice. I needed to find out where I was, how to get off this godforsaken road. I climbed out of the cab, the cold night air biting at my skin, and walked up to the door. It creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing into the stillness. Inside, the diner was empty. No customers, no waitress, no cook behind the counter. Just a jukebox in the corner playing some old country tune I didn't recognize. I called out, but no one answered. That's when I saw the photo. It was hanging on the wall behind the counter, a black and white picture of a truck. My truck. Same rig, same trailer, parked outside the same diner. But the picture looked ancient, like it had been taken decades ago. My blood ran cold as I stared at the photo, my mind racing. How the hell was that possible? How could my truck be in a picture from before I was even born? Then from behind me, I heard the door creak open. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the fog, thick and endless, pressing against the glass. And in that moment, I knew. I was never getting off Route 13. Not alive, anyway. Been driving rigs since I was old enough to get my CDL, and I've seen just about everything the road can throw at a man. I've braved ice storms in the Rockies, white-knuckled it through tornadoes in Kansas, and slept in my cab in the middle of nowhere more times than I can count. But none of that compares to what happened one cold October night on I-90, deep in the heart of Wyoming. It was the kind of night that gets under your skin, the kind of night that still makes me wake up in a cold sweat. It started like any other haul. I was taking a load of electronics from Seattle to Chicago, a long haul, but nothing I hadn't done before. The weather was clear, the air crisp with the first bite of winter, and the road was wide open. No traffic, no distractions, just miles and miles of highway. I was making good time, planning to stop at a truck stop outside of Gillette for a quick bite and a nap before pushing on. Around 1 a.m., I noticed the fog rolling in. It was strange. The forecast had been clear all night, but there it was, thick and heavy, settling over the road like a shroud. I slowed down, flicking on my high beams, but the fog swallowed the light. My CB crackled to life, just static at first, then a voice, faint and broken. "Breaker. Anyone out there on I-90?" I grabbed the mic, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. There was something off about the voice, low, gravelly, like the guy on the other end was struggling to breathe. "Yeah, I'm here," I said. "Who's this?" Silence. The static hummed for a few seconds. Then the voice came back, clearer this time. "Get off the road." The words sent a chill down my spine. I looked around, but there was nothing out there. Just the road, the fog, and the faint outline of the mountains in the distance. "Who is this?" I asked, a little more forceful. "You trying to mess with me?" The CB went dead, nothing but static. I shook my head, figuring it was some prankster trying to get a rise out of me. Truckers have a twisted sense of humor sometimes, especially on these long, lonely hauls. But the warning stuck with me. I kept driving, pushing through the fog, which only seemed to get thicker. My GPS had lost signal a while back, and the radio was nothing but fuzz. The road was narrowing, the darkness pressing in closer, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone out there. Every now and then, I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a flash of movement in the mist. Something darting across the road. But every time I looked, there was nothing, just shadows and fog. Then I saw the lights. At first they were faint, just a flicker in the distance. But as I got closer, they grew brighter. 2 headlights heading straight for me. I slowed down, squinting through the fog, expecting the car to pass on the other side. But the lights didn't move. They stayed dead center. Right in my lane, coming at me faster than they should have, I slammed on the horn, the sound blaring into the night. Nothing. The lights kept coming, blinding me, burning through the fog. My heart was pounding now, my hands slick on the wheel. I swerved hard to the right, my tires screeching on the pavement. For a moment, I thought I was going to crash. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, the lights were gone. Just gone. Like they'd never been there. I pulled over to the side of the road, my breath coming in ragged gasps. What the hell had just happened? I'd been sure I was about to hit something, or someone, but there was nothing. The road behind me was empty. No lights, no cars, no sign of anything out of the ordinary. After a few minutes, I got back on the road, but the uneasy feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. I kept glancing in the mirrors, half expecting those lights to come back. The fog was still thick, but the road seemed darker now, like something was waiting just beyond the reach of my headlights. That's when I saw it. Standing on the side of the road, just outside the beam of my headlights, was a figure, a man. Or at least it looked like a man, tall, thin, wearing a long coat that flapped in the wind. His face was hidden in the shadows, but I could feel him staring at me, watching. My heart skipped a beat, and I slowed down again, staring at the windshield, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. He didn't move. He just stood there, motionless, as I passed. Then, in the mirror, he was gone, vanished. I sped up, my pulse racing. I told myself it was just a trick of the fog. My mind playing games with me after hours on the road. But deep down, I knew better. There was something out there, something that shouldn't have been. The road ahead was empty again, and for the next hour, I drove in silence, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. But the feeling of being watched never went away. I kept checking the mirrors, waiting for that figure to reappear, for the lights to flash in the darkness. Then, without warning, the CB crackled again. "Last chance, driver," the voice whispered, "get off the road." My heart pounded in my chest. Whoever it was, they weren't messing around. I was miles from anywhere. No exits, no towns, nothing but open road and fog. I grabbed a mic, my voice shaking as I spoke. "What do you want?" I demanded. "Who the hell are you?" There was a long pause. Then the voice came back, quieter this time, almost sad. "They never listen. They never listen." Suddenly, my headlights hit something up ahead. I slammed on the brakes, my rig screeching to a halt. There, in the middle of the road, was another truck, an old rig, rusted and battered, its trailer jackknifed across both lanes. The windows were shattered. The cab crumpled like it had been in a wreck years ago. But there was no sign of the driver. My heart raced as I stepped out of the cab, the cold air biting into my skin. I grabbed my flashlight and approached the wreck, every instinct screaming at me to turn back, to get in my truck and keep driving. But something pulled me toward it. I reached the driver's side door, the metal creaking as I opened it. Inside was a mess of broken glass, torn seats, and old blood stains. Whoever had been in the wreck hadn't walked away. I leaned closer, shining my light into the cab, and that's when I saw it. A photo, an old crumpled picture wedged in the cracked dashboard. It was a picture of me, standing next to my rig, smiling, as if someone had taken it just days ago. But the edges were worn, faded, like it had been sitting there for years. I staggered back, my heart pounding in my chest, the fog swirling around me. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. And then, in the distance, I heard it. The sound of an engine, a low rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the fog, but there was nothing there, just a wreck. The endless road and the sound of that engine growing closer, louder. I ran back to my truck, jumped inside and hit the gas. The engine roared to life and I tore down the highway, not daring to look back. The fog chased me, thick and suffocating, but I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down until I saw the lights of a gas station in the distance. I pulled in, parked and sat there for a long time, my hands still shaking on the wheel. I never told anyone about that night, never took Route 90 through Wyoming again. But sometimes, when I'm alone on the road, late at night, I think about that voice on the CB. And I wonder how many drivers didn't listen, and how many more will vanish into the fog. I've been a truck driver for nearly 15 years, and I've seen my fair share of oddities out on the open road. But nothing could prepare me for what happened one fateful night on Highway 51. It was late October. The nights were getting longer, and the air had that crisp bite of approaching winter. I was hauling a load of farm equipment from Kansas City to a small town in Montana, planning to arrive by dawn. The first part of the trip was uneventful. I cruised along, the rhythmic hum of the tires on asphalt lulling me into a comfortable trance. The landscape was flat and open, stretching out beneath the vast star-filled sky. As I approached the outskirts of a small town, my headlights picked up a figure standing by the side of the road. It was a man, tall and gaunt, wearing a worn-out jacket and a battered hat. He raised a hand, signaling for me to stop. My instincts kicked in. I was taught never to pick up hitchhikers, but something about this guy intrigued me. Maybe it was the desperation in his eyes or the way he seemed to melt into the shadows. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down my window. "Need a lift?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, please." "I've been waiting here for hours," he replied, his voice hoarse and raspy. I hesitated, weighing my options. But then something in his gaze convinced me to let him in. I unlocked the door and he climbed into the passenger seat, not saying a word. "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "Just past Cedar Ridge," he muttered, staring out the window into the night. The silence stretched between us, thick and uneasy. I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. He was thin. Too thin. His skin had a sickly pallor, and I could see the shadows under his eyes. It unnerved me, but I shook it off. As we drove, the road twisted and turned, eventually leading us into the more remote parts of Highway 51. The fog rolled in thick, shrouding the road and creating an eerie atmosphere. I turned on the headlights, but they barely penetrated the darkness ahead. "Do you live around here?" I asked, hoping to break the silence. He turned to me, his eyes wide. "Not exactly. I've been traveling for a while." There was something about his tone that made me uneasy. It was almost as if he was avoiding the question. I decided to change the subject. "Do you work in town?" I pressed. He chuckled softly, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "You could say that. I have a few unfinished business dealings." The way he said it made my heart race. I felt a sinking sensation in my stomach. I wanted to drop him off and get as far away from him as possible, but I was already deep into the highway with no gas stations or towns in sight. As we drove, I noticed something strange. The fog seemed to pulse almost like it was alive. I glanced at the rearview mirror and saw two headlights behind us, getting closer. But as I looked back to the front, the man was staring at me, his expression fixed and intense. "Don't look back," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. I felt my pulse quicken. "Why? What's behind us?" "Just drive," he insisted, his eyes locked onto mine. "Whatever you do, don't stop." I didn't need to be told twice. I pressed down on the accelerator, feeling the truck lurch forward. The headlights behind us grew brighter, their beams slicing through the fog like knives. The road twisted and turned, and I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "What do you mean, don't stop?" I demanded, fear creeping into my voice. "Trust me," he replied, his tone chilling. "It's not what you think. They're not here for you." I risked a glance at the mirror again. The headlights were right on our tail now, nearly touching the back of my trailer. Panic surged through me. I had to shake them off. I swerved onto a side road hoping to lose them, but the truck followed without hesitation. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted, my heart racing. "Just keep going," he urged, his voice rising. "Don't look back." I pressed the gas pedal harder, praying I could outrun whatever was behind us. But the truck stayed right there, gaining on us with unnatural speed. Suddenly, the passenger leaned closer, whispering urgently, "You have to know the truth about this highway." "What truth?" I gasped, fear making my voice tremble. This road is cursed. People who travel it don't always make it out. They become part of it. I felt a shiver run down my spine. What do you mean? Before he could answer, the headlights behind us surged forward, almost merging with my rear view. I caught a glimpse of the driver, a shadowy figure with eyes that glowed like embers. My heart dropped. This wasn't just a truck. It was something else, something sinister. We have to lose them, I yelled, my mind racing. I took a hard turn onto another dirt road, the tires kicking up gravel and dust. Don't stop, keep going, he shouted, panic creeping into his voice. I pushed the truck to its limits, but the headlights stayed right on our tail. The road became rougher, the truck bouncing violently as I navigated the twists and turns. I could hear the engine roaring behind us, gaining ground. Why are they after us? I screamed, gripping the wheel like it was my lifeline. Because I'm with you, he shouted back, fear flashing in his eyes. They want me. Just then, I spotted a small cabin up ahead, barely visible through the fog. Desperation clawed at me. I swerved toward it, slamming the brakes as we skidded to a stop. Get out, I shouted, flinging open the door. We have to hide. We jumped out and ran toward the cabin. But as we reached the door, the headlights behind us flared brightly, illuminating the entire area. I turned to look back. And that's when I saw it. The truck had come to a stop and the shadowy figure inside was now standing outside. It was enormous, towering over the truck with an aura of darkness that made my blood run cold. I yanked the cabin door open and we both rushed inside, slamming it shut behind us. The cabin was dark, dusty, and abandoned. I fumbled for a light switch and as I flipped it on, I realized the walls were covered in old photographs, snapshots of different truckers, all with the same haunted expressions. What is this place? I breathed, panic surging in my veins. This is where they bring the lost ones, he said, his voice trembling. They take them in and they never come back. I heard a loud bang against the door. The shadowy figure was trying to get in. What do we do? I asked, my voice shaking. Find something to block the door, he shouted, searching the room. I grabbed a heavy table and pushed it against the door just as it burst open. The figure stood there, eyes blazing, and I could feel the malevolence radiating from it. Run, I yelled, and we dashed toward the back of the cabin, searching for another way out. But there was nothing, just walls closing in on us. The shadow moved closer, its form shifting and warping. And I felt an icy grip of despair settle over me. Why did you pick me up? I yelled at him, the weight of realization crashing down. You brought this on me. I didn't mean to, he shouted back, fear etched on his face. I thought I could escape. The shadow lunged at us, and in that moment, everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in my truck, driving down Highway 51. The sun was rising and everything felt eerily normal, but there was a nagging feeling in my gut. I looked around and my heart dropped. The passenger seat was empty. The fog was gone, but in the rearview mirror, I swore I saw that shadowy figure standing by the side of the road, watching. I drove on, never looking back, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than ever. Whatever happened that night, I knew one thing. Highway 51 wasn't just a road. It was a graveyard for lost souls, and I had barely escaped its grasp. I've been driving trucks for over 10 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. But nothing prepared me for that fateful night on Route 66. I was hauling a load of farm supplies from California to Texas, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt an uneasy tension in the air. The night was dark, and the highway stretched endlessly ahead, lit only by my headlights. I was about an hour outside of Barstow when the radio started to flicker. At first, it was just static, but then a voice broke through, low and gravely. "Get off the road. It's not safe." I dismissed it as a prank or some radio glitch, but unease crept into my mind. I kept driving, the truck rumbling beneath me, but the feeling didn't leave. The shadows along the roadside seemed to deepen, and every now and then I catch a glimpse of something moving in the periphery. Just then, I spotted a figure standing by the road, illuminated by my headlights. A woman, drenched and shivering, her hair plastered to her face. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down the window. "Need a lift?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She nodded, her eyes wide with desperation. "Please, I need to get to the next town." I hesitated, but opened the door, and she climbed into the cab, her presence filling the space with an eerie chill. I could smell the rain on her clothes, but there was something else, something musty, like decay. "Where are you headed?" I asked as I merged back onto the highway. "Just a little further down," she replied, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "I'm trying to escape." "Escape? From what?" I asked. Curiosity piqued. She shivered and looked out the window. "There's something out here, something that follows." Felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" "It's hard to explain," she said, her voice trembling. "I was hitchhiking last week and the truck that picked me up, it wasn't just a truck. The driver was different. A knot formed in my stomach." "Different how?" "His eyes, they were hollow. And he said he was collecting souls for the highway." I scoffed, trying to lighten the mood. "Sounds like a campfire story." She shot me a look that froze the blood in my veins. "It's not a joke." I barely escaped. Suddenly the radio crackled again, this time louder. "Keep driving. Don't stop for anything." I glanced at her and she was staring out the window, her face pale. "What's happening?" I asked, feeling a swell of panic. "That's it," she whispered. "We need to go faster." I pressed the accelerator, my heart racing as the truck picked up speed. But the fog thickened around us, closing in like a predator. I could barely see 10 feet ahead. "Just keep going," she urged, her voice rising in fear. "Don't look back." The shadows along the road seemed to twist and warp, forming dark shapes. I gripped the wheel tighter, sweat pooling on my brow. The radio buzzed with static. Then I heard it, loud and clear. "Turn back. She's with me." I felt a surge of dread as I glanced at her. Her eyes were wide, and she shook her head violently. "Don't listen. Just drive." The shadows along the road seemed to twist and warp, forming dark shapes. I gripped the wheel tighter, sweat pooling on my brow. The radio buzzed with static. Then I heard it, loud and clear. "Turn back. She's with me." I felt a surge of dread as I glanced at her. Her eyes were wide and she shook her head violently. "Don't listen, just drive." I glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. A truck was behind us, headlights blazing like angry eyes. It was a big rig, but there was something off about it. The driver's side was empty. "Keep your foot down," she screamed, and I pushed the gas pedal even harder. But the truck stayed right on our tail, its engine roaring like a beast hungry for its prey. I swerved onto a dirt road, hoping to lose it, but the truck followed, relentless. "Where are we going?" I shouted over the noise. "Just away," she cried. "We can't let it catch us." The road was bumpy, and the trees loomed overhead like grasping hands. Just then, a flash of light caught my eye. I looked over and saw it, a figure standing among the trees, watching us. My heart sank. It was a man. Gaunt and pale, his eyes hollow and dark. "Drive," she screamed, and I slammed my foot down, the truck lurching forward. The darkness enveloped us, the only sound, the roar of the engine, and the pounding of my heart. But as I glanced in the mirror again, I saw the figure was gone, replaced by the headlights of the pursuing truck. Why won't it stop? I shouted, panic rising. Because it can't. We have to find a way out, she replied, her voice frantic. Just then I spotted a small diner up ahead, its neon lights flickering. There, I pointed. We can hide inside. I pulled in sharply and we jumped out, rushing toward the entrance. As I burst through the door, the bell jingled, but the diner was empty, silent as if time had frozen. I turned to see the woman behind me. But she had stopped at the threshold. Get inside, I yelled, but she hesitated, staring back into the darkness. Don't let it in, she whispered, her voice trembling. Suddenly the diner door swung open with a creak, and there it was. The trucker, his hollow eyes fixed on us, a grin stretching unnaturally across his face. Welcome, he said, his voice low and sinister. You've been chosen. I grabbed the woman's hand, pulling her inside and slamming the door shut. I locked it, but the sound of the engine revving outside made my blood run cold. The truck was parked right outside, its headlights illuminating the diner like a spotlight. What do we do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We wait, she said, her eyes wide with fear, until it goes away. We crouched behind the counter, trying to stifle our breaths. Outside the engine roared, and I could hear footsteps approaching. The door rattled, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. Don't let it in, I whispered. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the trucker's face appeared in the window, grinning like a wolf. You can't hide forever, he taunted. You belong to the highway now. The lights dimmed, and for a moment, everything was dark. Then they burst back to life. And the diner was empty. The trucker was gone, the fog rolling back in like a blanket. What just happened? I gasped, feeling lightheaded. It's a trap, she said, shaking. We have to leave now. I nodded, feeling a surge of determination. We crept to the door, pushing it open slowly. The highway was quiet, the fog thicker than ever. Where's the truck? I whispered, looking around. But it was gone. The road lay empty, devoid of any sign of the sinister presence that had chased us. I turned to her, confusion written on my face. What now? We get out of here. Fast, she replied, her voice steadying. As we climbed back into my rig, the tension began to lift. I started the engine and pulled back onto the highway, but something in my gut told me we weren't out of danger yet. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life again, and that same gravelly voice returned. You can't escape. You're part of the road now. I felt a cold sweat break out across my back. The headlights of another truck appeared in the distance, and I felt my heart race. They'll never let you go, she said softly, her eyes filling with tears. I slammed the gas pedal to the floor, racing down the highway as the lights behind us grew closer. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The radio buzzed once more, and I braced myself for what was coming next. Whatever I had picked up that night was not just a hitchhiker. It was a warning, and I had ignored it. As I drove into the fog, I realized the highway held secrets far darker than I could ever imagine. And I was about to discover just how deep those secrets ran. Been a truck driver for over 15 years, and I thought I'd seen it all. But nothing could prepare me for the night I encountered the Phantom on Route 62. It started like any other haul, picking up a load in Denver and heading towards St. Louis. The weather was clear, and the road stretched endlessly ahead, illuminated by my headlights. As night fell, I settled into my routine, the hum of the engine. A comforting backdrop. Around midnight, I pulled into a rest area to stretch my legs and grab a quick bite. The parking lot was eerily empty, save for a few other trucks. I noticed an old rig parked off to the side, its lights flickering like a dying star. Curiosity got the better of me. I approached the truck, but it felt off. Too quiet. Too still. As I got closer, I saw a figure sitting inside. A man with a weathered face, staring blankly ahead. "Hey, you okay?" I called out. He didn't respond, just continued to stare into the night. I felt a chill creep down my spine. Something wasn't right. I backed away slowly and returned to my truck, dismissing the encounter as exhaustion. Back on the road, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I turned on the radio, but only static filled the air. Just then, I spotted headlights in my rearview mirror. A big rig tailing me closely. I thought nothing of it at first, but then it began to drift closer, almost as if it was trying to overtake me. I sped up, adrenaline pumping, but the truck matched my pace. Panic set in. I glanced in the mirror again, and that's when I saw him, the same man from the rest area, his face twisted in an eerie grin, eyes dark as coal. "Get away from me!" I shouted, slamming the gas pedal. The truck roared forward, but the phantom followed, relentless. I swerved onto a side road, hoping to lose him, but he stayed right on my tail. The road twisted and turned, becoming more desolate with each passing second. I could feel my heart racing, the fear clawing at my chest. "Why won't you leave me alone?" I yelled. But the only response was the roar of his engine. Suddenly, the headlights flickered, then went out completely. I glanced back, and to my horror, the truck was gone. My heart sank. Had I finally lost him? But the relief was short-lived. I turned my attention back to the road, and that's when I saw it. The figure standing in the middle of the highway, blocking my path. I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop just inches away. It was him. The man from the rest area, his face now contorted in rage. "You can't escape," he hissed, voice echoing through the still night air. I was frozen in fear, but instinct kicked in, and I threw the truck into reverse. I backed up, heart pounding, but he didn't move. Instead, he raised his hand, and the truck's engine sputtered and died. Panic surged through me. I was stranded, alone with this apparition. I grabbed my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. I was trapped. "Why are you doing this?" I cried out, desperation creeping into my voice. "Because you took what's mine," he snarled, his eyes glowing in the darkness. "You took my life." Suddenly, memories flooded back. My first haul years ago, I remembered passing a truck on that very stretch of road. A horrific accident that had taken a driver's life. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. "I didn't know," I shouted, tears stinging my eyes. "I'm sorry." The phantom's expression softened for just a moment. "You can't bring me back," he whispered, his voice now a haunting echo. With a surge of courage, I reached for the ignition, praying the engine would start. I turned the key, and to my shock, the engine roared back to life. I slammed it into gear and sped past him, the sound of his voice trailing off behind me. "Remember me?" I didn't look back. The road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, and I drove until the sun began to rise, chasing away the darkness. When I finally reached St. Louis, I parked my rig and took a deep breath. My hands trembling on the wheel, I knew I had escaped, but I could still feel his presence lingering, a reminder that some ghosts never truly leave us. From that night on, I never drove that stretch of Route 62 alone again. The phantom of the highway haunted me, a shadow in the rearview mirror, reminding me of the fragility of life and the road we travel.